Hey, thanks for tuning in and giving this video a shot. I've been noticing a lot more these days, people getting offended about various things that make them upset. And often I feel it's very much merited. People can be complete jerks, completely insensitive, lack any sort of sense of empathy or compassion for their fellow human beings, and can be completely and utterly selfish at times. There's people who go out of their way just to see if they can piss someone else off or get them upset, and it's kind of disturbing to see that people are actually motivated and get off on seeing other people get upset or suffer in some way. It would be easy for me to forget that there's actually people out there like that, because I tend to surround myself with people who are kind and respectful individuals, but the internet has been a great source of revealing people's true colors, because on social media sites, all you are is a photo with some text next to it, and as a result, people will just go off the handle and have knee-jerk reactions when it comes to someone posting something. Someone could state their opinion about something, and someone else can take that opinion completely personal, as if it's a personal attack, when the person saying their opinion did not mean to make the personal attack at all. They were just saying their opinion about something. Now in this video, I don't want to get into specific things, because that's where you get in trouble and that's where people want to argue with you. And frankly, I'm not interested in arguing with people over semantics, the meaning behind words, intentions behind what people are trying to get across, and so on, because everyone's unique, everyone's different, everyone has a different way of speaking and a different level of tolerance for language, and as well as various levels of sensitivity when it comes to saying things and receiving information that they read or hear other people say. Wow, that was a mouthful. Communication's tricky. That's the easy way for me to put this all together. So I guess the point of this video is just to shed light on that and talk about it a little bit, about how I feel that there's a lot of jerks out there and people who want to troll you and just get underneath your skin just to get you to reply and argue with them on social medias. I do want to say this though, sometimes, not all the time, not most of the time, not even part of the time, I don't want to put a quantifier on here, because I want you just to observe it yourself without having any sort of influence on it. Like, I don't want to influence your perceptions anyway, but just kind of notice this. Sometimes it's easier for you to just adjust your own attitude and the way that you're perceiving things from other people instead of getting offended. Now, before you get all huffy puffy, please remember, I'm saying sometimes it is like that. I'm not saying all the time, I'm not saying most of the time. Sometimes it is more appropriate or more pragmatic for you to step away from what they're saying to you and not be offended if you can. I'm not saying it's easy just to shut off the whole being offended thing. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying you should just try to shut off being offended altogether, because that doesn't make sense. You don't just hide your feelings. You don't just turn off being offended, or any other emotion for that matter. But what I am saying is it's a good idea to step away and step back from those knee-jerk reactions and those emotions and being offended in general, to reevaluate yourself and take a look at yourself and figure out why you are being offended before you start knee-jerk reactions and reprimanding other people and telling them how they should speak and what they should and shouldn't do with themselves and how they should present themselves. Because I know that in many cases, being offended is not an option. It just happens. It happens on its own. But it's also important to realize that being offended doesn't solve anything, and very often it leads to worse things. So you can be offended by something, and then you can try to confront that situation, and it doesn't really ever lead to any differences or changes. You just end up feeling bad, feeling uncomfortable, and that's about it. You're offended, and where do you go from there? And very often the person who offended you is not open-minded enough to hear you out to change their mind. Now, I'm not saying you should give up on changing other people's minds or showing them a different way of looking at things or anything like that, but I'm saying sometimes folks, not all the time, sometimes it's a better idea to reevaluate yourself and step away from the situation. Because chances are the jerk that said whatever they said is not going to change because you are upset. If anything, it's going to reinforce them to keep being a jerk because they're getting off on it in some way. Now, I'm generalizing again, but just think of it like that. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes, not all the time. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes a little bit of empathy and compassion extended towards even the people who are being jerks, not just the ones who are ignorant of why they're being offensive, the ones who are deliberately being offensive. A little bit of compassion, a little bit of empathy, and a little bit of understanding, trying to understand them, can go a long way for you to just extend a little bit of forgiveness, even within yourself, or to step away and just walk away from the situation instead of trying to combat it head on, when combating it can only make it worse. But sometimes, yes, it is better and more pragmatic to adjust your attitude and reevaluate why you are getting offended, and stepping away from your emotions and stepping away from that engagement with whoever offended you, whether it's online on social media or physically in person somewhere, and reevaluate it. Reevaluate it before you make that decision to be offended and get hostile or reprimanding towards them, because it might not help the situation, it might just make it worse, and then both parties end up feeling bad, or worse, you end up feeling really bad, and they feel excited and ecstatic that they pissed off another one of those such and suches. It really is too bad that we have people out there that just want to troll other people and they get off on that. They got nothing else better to do but try to get into the skin of other people just to see them squirm around. And I see this sort of behavior with people on both ends of the extreme ends of the political spectrum. Now, I don't want to bring politics in this, and I'm not going to pick one side or the other, but I do want to say that people on the far left sometimes really want to say things just to get under the skin of people who are on the far right, and vice versa. I see it happen just as much often on both ends of this whole entire political spectrum. And meanwhile, the people who are in the middle of the political spectrum, the more moderate folks, they get flack from both sides for not picking a side and sticking it and drawing a line in the sand. And since I brought up politics and that whole can of worms, I will say this too. I think that the political spectrum is more than just left and right. There's up and down, forward and back, and diagonal directions. There's a 360-degree circle, squared or cubed or whatever the heck. I'm not a mathematician. The point is that people are a lot more complex than we make them out to be. You can't just put people in boxes, classify them as such and label them as such and pretend that people are all the same because of the color of the t-shirts they wear, or the color of their eyeballs, or even more ridiculous, the color of their skin, or their religious beliefs, for instance, or what part of the world they're from. Now, I know stereotypes exist for a reason. There's cultural differences, and they exist, and we have to recognize these things. And there's obvious differences between various types of people all around the world. But through understanding our differences and trying to understand that people have their own unique perspective, and just because they said something you found offensive does not necessarily mean they were trying to offend you. Intentions are real important here. Paying attention to people's intentions and what they mean by something is just as important, if not more important, than you having a knee-jerk reaction to something someone said. I feel that quite a number of times people don't even bother taking a look at the intentions of what someone's trying to communicate when they're saying things, and they're paying too much attention to the verbiage that they're saying and looking for reasons. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes people look for reasons to get offended just so they can get on their soapbox and reprimand other people out there. And I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes people are like that. There's some folks out there that look for excuses just so they can get on the moral high ground and on their high horse and point the finger and reprimand other people. And I can find that just as annoying and just as deplorable as people who deliberately go out of their way to offend other people. I think both kinds of those extreme behaviors are poisonous and just don't add much to a good conversation. I'm sure this video just may offend someone out there, and I'm sorry in advance. I honestly mean well. I'm offended that your feelings are hurt. Well, I'm offended that you're offended. I do feel that keeping empathy and understanding and compassion and the ability to step into someone else's shoes and the ability to try to read other people's intentions, more often than not, it reduces how often and how much I get offended on a personal note. And I try to keep this kind of method of thinking inside my brain when it comes to empathy and compassion and understanding other people, when it comes to dealing with people who are complete jerks and going out of their way to be offensive to other people. In that case, it makes it a lot easier for me to make the choice to not be offended, because I don't want to give them the power to make me upset because they're saying things that they're deliberately trying to get you upset. Why would you want to give them the power and show that you are upset by what their opinions are? Why should you care about what their opinion is when they're just being a jerk anyways? Their opinion doesn't matter. They're just an asshole. Now, I'll admit, I'm not bulletproof when it comes to jerks and assholes getting underneath my skin. I'm not immune to it at all. And from time to time, admittedly, they do get underneath my skin. But if I take a step back and remember these things, I can recognize that they are the problem. It makes it much easier for me to remember that I can't change something I have no control over, and nor should I try to have any control over it. I shouldn't try to get them to change their language, suggest them to use different words to make it more palatable or more PC for people to listen to. Just walk away from it. It doesn't do me any good to feel bad and to get offended, and it just gives them power. It makes them get a rush sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. Now, I posted something similar to this on a social media platform somewhere else in the world out there, and I had some feedback, some folks out there, and a couple of folks wanted to remind me that this comes from a place of privilege. I am a white, cisgendered, straight male, so this is easy for me to say. Now, I understand for all those reasons I have lots of privileges that other people do not have, and I recognize that I get treated differently from other people because of these privileges. I totally see it, I understand it, and I recognize that it's not fair. I get that. And of course, it's not a choice to simply just not be offended. I understand that too. But please remember, once again, my whole point was sometimes it makes more sense to walk away, not engage in the situation, and reevaluate why you're getting offended, before you start engaging with someone who's just going to troll you and just get off on your demise and you being upset and offended. And the whole point of this video and my post that I made on the social media that's very similar to the nature of this video was not so much to have to do with my personal situation, but our situation as people, not just my perspective. So I think this mentality can apply to many different perspectives out there. I didn't mean it to be necessarily limited to my personal identity, how I identify, my labels that I use, or my privileges. It did have more to do with us all being human beings and coexisting together, and just to offer another perspective in how you can deal with other people. Remember, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's simply better just to walk away and move forward. Anyways, folks, I hope someone out there got something out of this video. Let me know what you think about the contents of this video, and if I am being unreasonable or if I'm being offensive, I'd like to know. Please drop a comment down below and let's have a civil conversation about it. And that's a wrap, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in and giving me your time. I appreciate it very much. If you're new to my channel, please know that I post a lot here on YouTube. I post every single day of the year of 2021. I post about many different things. So if you check my playlist section here on my channel, you can figure out what I'm all about as I organize my playlist section and all my content into different playlists to make it easier for you to find the content that I produce on a daily basis here. I post weekly circus and flow arts tutorials, so if you want to learn how to juggle clubs, contact juggle like David Bowie did in Labyrinth with those crystal balls, how to spin things on your finger, how to do the devil sticks or the rhythm sticks, depending on what you want to call them. I teach all sorts of things here on my channel, so just check out my playlist, click on my circus and flow arts basics link or my contact juggling tutorials to know more about all of that. And I'll end my video the way I've been ending all my videos lately with these words. Remember to never give up, do your best, stay true to you, and as always, be amazing, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good night. Bye-bye.